white rural rage, the threat to American democracy.
Oh, really?
Why are white rural voters a threat to democracy?
We lay out the fourfold interconnected threat that white rural voters pose to the country. First of all, and we show 30 polls and national studies to demonstrate this, so we provide the receipts in Chapter 6. They're the most racist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant, and anti-gay geodemographic group in the country. Second, they're the most conspiracist group. QAnon support and subscribers, election denialism, COVID denialism and scientific skepticism, Obama birtherism. Third, anti-democratic sentiments. They don't believe in an independent press, free speech. They're most likely to say the president should be able to act unilaterally without any checks from Congress or the courts or the bureaucracy. They're also the most strongly white nationalist and white Christian nationalists. And fourth, they are most likely to excuse or justify violence as an acceptable alternative to peaceful public discourse.
Did you notice anything about those two guys?
Well, they are both white men.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Imagine if Fox News did a segment about black voters like this. People would be fired. There'd be protests outside of their studios. People would be smashing their windows. It would be absolute bonkers. And yet, you can, white rural Christians, go ahead. You can do whatever you want, apparently, and say the most disgusting, vile things. And, oh, they're the most racist. They're the most conspiratorial. Like, dude, I mean, really? You want to just, if we want to get ugly, we could talk about all the different races and how they all think about each other. I don't think that's really that constructive, but like, let's not pretend like white rural people are the only one who have prejudices. Like, give me a break.
It's just an icon of the most racist thinking in America, because it's this reductionism of like, okay, we have white rural voters and all of them think the same way. They're all the same. It's like thinking about the black vote and being like, okay, all black voters are going to go Democrat because that's what black people think.
And if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
I mean, I grew up in Appalachia. The first 22 years of my life, I lived in a town of 2,500 people in the middle of New Hampshire. And they don't agree. Like, this is a very intellectually, I guess, diverse community. And for them to just be like, here's what white rural voters are like, it's so offensive. And like you said, Josh, substitute black inner city for white rural and talk about the hypocrisy you could expect. Or, Muslim immigrants for white rural. Can you imagine what the backlash would be?
The rurals have all moved far away from the Democratic Party because they think the Democratic Party is out to get them. And they only think that not because they're conspiratorial, it's because, I don't know, you guys say you are after us. I mean, like,
there's more people that believe that white people are inherently evil right now in America, partially because it's broadcast by people like MSNBC, than there are QAnon crazies that are like, yeah, I'll shoot anyone that comes to my door.
I waitressed at this rural New Hampshire restaurant, middle of Appalachia, for 4 years in high school. And there was one QAnon guy, and he would come in and sit at the bar and have like a beer, and he'd sit there and spout and all of the other white rural people who come into the bar, they kind of treat him like the crazy uncle, So yeah, these guys do exist out there. But like you said, if you're looking at the numbers game, for them to take that one crazy guy at the bar, like old Uncle Ted or whatever, and extend that to this huge population. And for me, I mean, it's like just evidence that the left did not learn anything from 2016. You call them deplorables, what's going to happen?
We're not talking about just extending the numbers. We're talking about the people that were platformed with this book and are now like on the press tour for it. So not only said like, oh, a numbers game, there's a lot of them out there. They're saying that white people that live in a rural area are the greatest threat to democracy. They're not the only people that have said that. The president of the United States has said white people that live in rural areas are the greatest threat to democracy. So much so that they've been demonized compared to Nazis, all of these things. Could you imagine talking about half the country like that? And then like that allowed in polite society is unbelievable to me.
Conservatives have been saying this for a long time, like starting with Pat Buchanan onward, saying like, look, the left it has as their agenda trying to target rural Americans, white Americans, conservative Americans, Christians. And for a long time, the left's like, what are you talking about? We're not doing that. Gosh, conspiracy theory. You guys are so paranoid. And then eventually they're like, well, yeah, actually, you are a big threat to democracy, and we want to hunt you down like you're in the safari. It's like, wait, what? And so, like, there's this clip that I was going to save it for my Twilight Zone, but we can mention it now. I mean, like, Michael Moore's on MSNBC, and he's talking about, the conflict in Israel and Hamas, right? And he's trying to convince the Jews in Israel, like, dude, your enemy is not Palestine. Your enemy is white Christians from Europe who they're the ones who built Auschwitz. They're the ones, in New York City who turned away the ships, from, send the Jews back to Nazi Germany. It's like, wow. Okay. So crimes that were done, horrible crimes against humanity that were done 90 years ago, you're going to try to convince Jews in Israel that the real enemy is the, white Christians from the United States and white Christians from Europe, as opposed to the conflict that they have going on right there in their backyard. So again, it points to this whole point that in the Democratic Party, all of the members, all the different fractures of their coalition are united that white Christian rural people, they're the problem.